Wonder Woman 1984 was released in theaters and on HBO Max on Christmas Day, and if you want to know how I watched it, well, I'm not telling you, but I will tell you how the movie was. So, what did I think of it? Uh, it was really weird. I mean, once we're introduced to the setting of 1984, you can just see how bonkers this film really is. It has such a campy feel to it. So I suppose we should talk about the plot. This is somewhat spoilers since the main story was kind of left out of the trailers, but trust me, it won't change how you view the film. Basically, there's this magical rock where you make any wish you want with it, which explains how Steve Trevor is back. Essentially, Pedro Pascal wants this rock so that he can grant anybody on Earth the power to wish for whatever they desire. Because these wishes begin turning somewhat catastrophic, both Diane and Steve have to stop him. That's it. That's the plot. You see what I mean? It's weird. Something I noticed is that although it doesn't feel like it was made in the 80s, it definitely feels like it was written in the 80s. I mean, as crazy as superhero films are nowadays, you have to admit we don't get plots like these in modern comic book movies. Sometimes you'll need to make sure of going into this movie is that it is very different from the first. It's no longer a somewhat gritty war film. It's kind of exactly what it promises from the trailers. A fun, cheesy 80s adventure. There's also really not a lot of action in this film. I mean, there was practically none in the first hour, and keep in mind this movie was 2.5 hours long, way longer than it needed to be. At times it feels like this film is more focused on Pedro Pascal than Diana, which is kind of strange. He was a weird yet oddly entertaining villain where I feel like the film would honestly be so much worse if he wasn't as extreme as he was, and that's really not a good thing. I haven't even mentioned Cheetah, because if I'm being honest, she wasn't even that important to the story. At a certain point, she did basically nothing until when she just decides, alright, guess I'm a villain now, and becomes a fucking furry. The CGI on her was pretty bad. Now, can I just say, how come blockbuster movie CGI is so garbage nowadays? Like, it really is getting worse and worse as the years go by. Like, am I the only person noticing this? This film was delayed 5 months. Could they not have fixed it up just a little bit? Now, this film isn't necessarily bad. I do have some positive things to say. Both Diana and Steve were a lot of fun to watch. They have great chemistry, and the emotional bits somewhat work too. And just in general, the film is fun to watch at times, even if it really extends the runtime longer than it needed to be. Oh yeah, there's also a cameo at the end. Yeah, that was pretty wonderful, I will say that. The film is just fine, and if you're in the mood to watch something you don't want to take too seriously, then I'd recommend it. It's just too bad that this is the best comic book film I've watched all year.